Hey guys, so today I wanted to film a makeup tutorial for prom because it is prom season, but more importantly, I wanted to film a 100% drugstore prom tutorial. This is the tutorial for the girls who maybe don't want to spend a ton of money at Sephora, or maybe don't want to get their makeup done by a professional makeup artist but still want really good, affordable, reliable options for their makeup. I know when I was in high school I was not making my own money, so I would have never been able to afford the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette or some high-end foundation. So I thought that I would do an all drugstore makeup tutorial to help you guys out. There are two products in here that are not drugstore, but I did offer you guys substitutes for those products. If I can find any prom pictures of me, then I will totally put them here because I had a blast, but I don't really think I looked that great. I had bleach blonde hair, with black roots. My makeup was very minimal. I could have done a lot better. So this kind of look is definitely what I would have done for prom 4 years ago. So if you're a high school senior going to prom, first of all, congratulations on graduating. Second of all, I hope you guys have so much fun, and I hope this tutorial benefits you guys somehow. I was debating on making this an affordable tutorial, meaning that I was thinking about throwing in products. Sorry if I'm shaking so much. I was thinking about throwing in products that are not available at the drugstore, but were still affordable items. However, I wanted to make sure these items were as accessible and affordable as possible, so I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial. Sorry for the long-winded intro, my intros are usually not this long, and I hope you guys enjoy. Keep on watching if you want to see how I got this look. So for the first step to this prom tutorial, I did skip out, well, I didn't skip out primer, but I just didn't record myself putting it on because the primer that I used is not drugstore. However, I used the Makeup Forever mattifying primer. I just had to use a primer because I'm very, very oily. Now I'm going to be color correcting my under eyes with my NYX concealer palette, as you guys should know if you've watched any of my other videos. Now for foundation, I'm going to be using the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Foundation. I am specifically using this foundation because of how good it looks in photography. My favorite foundation of pretty much all time is Revlon Color Stay. However, if I were going to prom, this is a foundation that I would use because you're going to be taking a lot of pictures. You're going to be taking a lot of selfies. You're going to be in a lot of group photos. And prom venues do not always have the best lighting, so they're probably going to be using flash photography, and I don't want you to look at those pictures 10 years down the line and say, what the hell was I doing with my foundation? So using a photo-friendly foundation is always a good idea, especially since prom is one of those occasions where you're going to be taking tons and tons of pictures. Now for concealer, I'm going to be using my LA Girl Pro Concealer. I'm just going to be using this underneath my eyes. I don't really need to use it on any spots on my face that I can tell. But if you do have any extra spots showing through that foundation, which I don't really think you would because this is a pretty solid medium to full coverage foundation, so I don't really think you would need too much concealer. But I always do concealer under my eyes, so I'm going to be using the LA Girl. Now that my concealer is done, I am going to be setting everything by baking, setting my whole face, the whole 9 yards. But before I do any of that, I am going to be laying down a liquid highlighter. I'm going to be using the Maybelline Strobing Liquid by Face Studio Illuminator in the shade 100 Light / Iridescent. You don't need to do this. One powder highlighter is good enough. But for me personally, I find that a lot of highlighters will last better if they have a liquid or cream highlighter underneath to stick to, and also it helps the highlighter become a little bit more bright, a little more intense. If that's what you want, then I would totally go for the liquid highlighter. If not, this is definitely a step you can totally skip out on. I'm just taking a little bit of my finger and dotting it along my cheekbones where I'm going to be placing my powder highlighter. and this sets rather fast. So you want to blend it out very quickly with your sponge. The reason why I'm doing this before powder and everything is because a lot of liquid highlighters, especially this one, become a lot more difficult to work with once your face already has powder on top. And also it can kind of mess with your foundation and the whole face routine if you do it afterwards, because it can kind of rub off your foundation otherwise. Now I'm going to be using my Rimmel Brow This Way brow kit for my eyebrows, obviously. And I am going to have a review coming up on this, but spoiler alert, I love it. The only downside to this is that you can get like a bit of a bold brow with this. You can't really do something natural with it. I'm awful at doing my brows on the camera. It's really hard. I do have 2 other brow tutorials, and I kind of use this in the same way that I used my Anastasia dip brow. So if you want to watch that video, I will have it in the cards or linked down below. It's pretty much the same thing. Told you guys, bold brows. Now for eyeshadow primer. Eyeshadow primer is not something that I personally use a ton, but that's only because my eyelids are pretty normal. They're not oily, they're not dry. I don't ever really need primer. I put concealer on my eyes and that is more than enough. But I would recommend using an eyeshadow primer for any special event, no matter what your eyelids are like. I'm going to be using the Wet n Wild eyeshadow primer, the photo focus one. I am not a huge eyeshadow primer fan, as I have mentioned a few seconds ago, but I have heard a lot of people compare this to a lot of higher end primers, like the MAC ones and the Urban Decay ones, so I'm assuming this is pretty good. Now for eyeshadow, I'm going to be using one palette from the drugstore. There were a few palettes that I wanted to use, but I figured I should probably stick to one palette because I wanted to make this as cost effective as possible. And I did practice this look yesterday, so I know it's not going to be a hot mess. I know that sounds bad, but I don't really have a lot of faith in drugstore eyeshadows, but this is pretty good. I'm going to be using the CoverGirl True Naked Nudes palette. I did struggle with this when I tried this the other night, but I actually tried it yesterday and it worked out really good. So I have a lot of faith it's going to turn out really good again today. And I am going to be setting my primer with this matte cream shade. You always want to set your primer with an eyeshadow because, again, kind of like the foundation, if you don't set it with a powder, the eyeshadows you put over top are going to skip and be patchy and just not cute. Now for a transition color, I'm going to be using this light matte taupe color in the palette for a transition, and I use transition colors because they make the other eyeshadows on top of them blend really smoothly and effortlessly, and it looks like a gradient as opposed to harsh lines. Now I'm going to be going in with a darker matte brown shade, which is that right here. And I am going to be putting that in my crease, but I'm going to be focusing it a little bit more on the outer corners of my crease. I'm not going to go really into my inner corners with this color. The next thing I'm going to use is also not drugstore, but I do have a drugstore alternative that I just don't own right now. I'm going to be using the Too Faced Glitter Glue. I always use this with shimmery eyeshadows, but especially ones from the drugstore, because as nice as this palette is, the shimmer shadows do need a little bit of help. So I'm going to be wetting them, and I'm also going to be putting down this glue base. NYX does make a glitter glue that I think is about $6, so you can totally opt for that instead of this. Now for my lid shade, I'm going to be using this really beautiful shimmery pink champagne color, but as I said, these shimmers do need a little bit of help, so I'm going to be wetting this shadow, and how I do that is I will spray my brush with the NYX Dewy Okay, my bottle looks really janky and ratchet, but I'm going to be spraying my brush with a little bit of this and dipping it into the shadow, and that helps so much with the intensity and the pigmentation of the shadow. Alright, so that is done. You want to kind of pat the shadow in instead of just swiping it, because that way, again, you will get more intensity, and not only that, but it will decrease the amount of fallout, and it will just last a lot better. Now, there is some pretty harsh lines going on here, so I'm going to blend it out into my crease shade, so that way it doesn't look so crazy intense. To add a little bit of depth to this eye look, I'm going to be taking the smallest amount of this shade over here. It looks black in the pan, but it actually comes off as just a really dark brown shade. So I'm going to be using that on this little crease brush, and I'm going to be putting that on the outer V of my corners just to deepen up the look a little bit. Now I'm going to be taking a clean e.l.f. blending brush just to blend things out even further. Now for an inner corner highlight, I'm going to be spritzing my brush once again. And I'm going to be using this very first pretty much white shimmery shade. Now I'm going to be taking the darkest shadow in the palette again, and I'm going to be taking my e.l.f. small angled brush, and I'm going to be using that as an eyeliner for today. I'm going to be using it to tightline, which is to line the upper lash line, and I'm going to be using it on the waterline, which is the lower lash line. Now I'm going to finally be wiping off this baking powder that I put down, and after that I'm going to be doing some lower lash line work. I'm going to be taking this small brush, and I'm going to be popping this color on the bottom of my lower lash line just to define things a little bit further. For mascara, I didn't really feel the need to include me putting that on because it's pretty basic, but I did use the L'Oreal Voluminous Carbon Black Mascara. You could totally do lashes with this. I think this look would benefit from some nice lashes, but I don't really know how to do that. So now I'm going to skip to contouring, and I'm going to be using the Wet n Wild contouring palette in the shade Dulce de Leche. The packaging is kind of broken, and I've already hit pan. So I'm going to be taking this brush and contouring my face with this. Tap off the excess. I do the fishy face to see where my cheekbones are at. Now for bronzer, I'm going to use the Wet n Wild Color Icon Bronzer in the shade Bikini Contest. I used this for the first time yesterday, and it was so beautiful on my skin. So I'm just going to have a light dusting of this all over my face just for a really nice, healthy bronzed look. I don't ever really go too heavy with the bronzer because I don't want to look like an orange Oompa Loompa. I just want to look a little bit more tan, a little bit more bronzed, but not Oompa Loompa. For blush, I'm going to be using my NYX blush in the color Pinched. I actually adore this blush. I've been really into a super pink blush cheek lately. Now for one of my favorite parts, highlighter. Pretty much everyone on YouTube has talked about this highlighter, but I adore it. It is the Wet n Wild highlighter in the shade Precious Petals. If you are darker, although I feel like this could work for darker skins as well, but if you're darker, they do have a more bronzy shade called Crown of My Canopy. I feel like Wet n Wild does highlighters really well, which I'm so happy about because I feel like for the longest time, the drugstore didn't really have much in terms of highlighting products, and if they did have highlighters, they weren't really that great. But Wet n Wild really has done a really great job formulating their highlighters for such an affordable price. Now for the lips, I will recommend some matte lip options for you guys, just because I know for prom, I did not really want to be touching up my lipstick all that much, although I wasn't really into makeup at that time, so I didn't know any better. But the two options I'm going to show you are matte liquid lipstick type of products. Yesterday when I tried out this look for the first time, I wore the Wet n Wild Catsuit liquid lipstick in the shade Rebel Rose, and because this is such a cool toned eye look, this looked so beautiful with it. But today, for this tutorial, I wanted to go a little bit more nude with it. So I'm going to be lining my lips with the Wet n Wild Gel Lip Liner in the color Think Flamingos, and I'm going to be using the NYX Soft Matte Lip Cream in the shade Stockholm. I am going to be setting my face with the Mario Badescu Rose Water Spray. It's not really drugstore, but I am putting this in here because it is pretty affordable. This size is $7 and it's a pretty decent size. The bigger size is $12, so compared to a lot of higher end setting sprays, this is really affordable. You could go with the NYX sprays. I'm not using this spray because it is dewy and I have oily skin. But they do have a matte spray that I have used and liked. LA Girl also has a matte spray. Elf has one. So there's tons of really affordable sprays out there. And this is also affordable. And this is just going to ensure that the makeup lasts all night while you're dancing and having a ton of fun with your friends and possibly your date. I didn't have a date and I had a ton of fun. But anyway, I find this also makes my makeup a little bit more pigmented, as weird as that sounds. I feel like it makes the highlighter a little bit more vibrant. So I'm shaking it. So yeah guys, this is the final look. Very light, very dewy and glowy, and very prom. As I was saying, very prom appropriate. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!